evening, everyone. My name is Anand Chawra, and I'm a senior principal with the Boston Consulting Group, and I'm based out of Singapore. I'll give you a short introduction of myself and of the topic, and then we'll kind of quickly introduce the rest of the panel members. And I know it's the last event of the day, so all of you would be tired, so we'll try and make it as interesting as possible. So bit of an introduction about myself. I actually lead the digital blockchain practice within BCG in Southeast Asia. But my day-to-day role within BCG is I'm kind of a part of the core team of digital BCG, and also I'm a part of the technology, media, and telecommunications practice. Now, blockchain is something which I've been personally passionate about. So in addition to the day job at BCG, I'm also a board member at an organization called Zinc, which is Zero Invisible Children. It's a blockchain-based technology startup which focuses on digital identity, and it's kind of being supported by the Royal Dutch family and the Dutch Red Cross. And in addition to that, I'm also associated with various client blockchain initiatives, which is being supported by my firm. And personally, look, blockchain is a topic which I invest in and I'm personally passionate about, so really excited. Getting onto the topic today, I think blockchain in insurance is a very interesting topic. So if you really think about it, insurers have actually been tirelessly trying to experiment with digital technologies for a while. And they've actually been experimenting with multiple initiatives and pilots to try and find that one specific advantage. And actually there is no mystery why. Because at the end of the day, if you really think about insurance, it is about information, right? It's about gathering information, it's about evaluating information, it's about valuing the risk. It's actually about collecting payments and actually dispersing payments based on information. And it is quite believable fact that insurers can dramatically improve their bottom line if only they are able to implement use cases of digital technologies and make their processes more efficient. But why haven't insurers been able to do that? I think there is a set of opposing forces which come into play. And that is because insurers really guard their information and their data and keep it very close to their heart, and they do not share it. Whenever there is an event which requires transactions or sharing of data, you find that almost all insurers really try and share minimum amount possible. And more often than not, it's the processes are manual and the processes are paper-based. And that's the way for the insurer to actually make sure that sensitive information is not leaked out or that the fraud is maintained. But in reality, it's actually a reflection of fear that digital information cannot be shared securely. Now, with the advent of blockchain, what the insurers are actually looking forward to is that perhaps with blockchain and Bitcoin, it is now possible to create and share information digitally in a very secure way. And yes, we could all agree that there are certain roadblocks, and full value capture is a few years away. But then the reality is that prototypes and pilots are now maturing. The reality is that the disruptive potential and the disintermediation potential is now proven, and adoption is actually picking up pace. There is lots and lots of potential, and I think the more deep you go into this topic, the more excited you actually become. So rather than me talking and rambling through facts and figures, and I can talk about it for hours and hours, I actually wanted to introduce the panel. Each of them kind of represent a different part of the insurance industry network. So we have people from fintech, we have people from technology, from strategy, as well as the industry. What we'd like to do over the next 30 minutes or so is actually hear some very informed and experienced perspectives from each one of them. And hopefully we'll actually, by the end of the day, learn something new. The way we've kind of organized this session, just to ensure that you get full value out of it, is we'll start by a set of questions which kind of look at what are the problems blockchain is trying to solve within the insurance industry. Kind of deep dive very quickly into what are some of the exciting developments which actually get these people excited, and perhaps round it out with kind of understanding what are some of the roadblocks which we need to navigate as a priority. Okay? With that being said, why don't I request each of the panel members to quickly introduce themselves, and then we can get cracking with the questions.
Great, thank you. My name's Amit. I'm the CEO for R3 in Asia Pacific. We are an enterprise blockchain software company based out of US, London, and Singapore. And our journey with insurance actually started in 2017 when we set up a COE with Accord, which is the standards body. This was done in the US, and we worked a lot with them on initial blockchain applications in insurance. Since then, we have seen globally a lot of work happening in the insurance sector on blockchain. Two of the biggest consortiums today use R3's technology to power their blockchain solutions. Those are RiskBlock out of US and B3I out of Europe. But then there are startups out of places like Hong Kong, Malaysia, and others also building. We actually see there across the value chain of insurance, from policy to billing to claims, we see applications of blockchain today which are in build or going to production fairly quickly.
Good afternoon. My name is Tomasz Kurczyk. I'm looking after digital business, but as well as aspects of technology and how we can transform our business both from the consumer perspective, but as well as from the B2B side of the business. And what actually keeps me excited about DLT overall is the solution. It helps to solve the very old problem that insurance is suffering from, which is the trust issue. Because embedded in the insurance business model, we have the conflict of interest. It's quite straightforward, because if you pay less claims, we make more money. So by definition, there's conflict of interest, and this results in lack of trust. We are one of the industries where the trust is the big problems. And potential of DLT is exactly solving this issue that I strongly believe will eventually as well result in solving other issues like fraud, because in many cases people think that insurance companies are cheating, so why should I shouldn't cheat the insurance companies when I manage the claims. So for me, this is one of the biggest added value, and something that I'm looking for in the application of DLT beyond many both industry, but as well retail applications of the technology.
Hi, I'm Shrikant. I'm with Oliver Wyman. Most of the stuff, most of the events where I go in, it starts by the blockchain is the only solution. But here I kind of feel very, very comfortable hearing some of the conversation saying, hey, blockchain may not be the solution. We need to think about alternative thing, right? Or what are the other solutions which exist from technology perspective? So in a sense, in a nutshell, what I work on is establishing the trust, as Thomas mentioned, looking at digital partnerships. So we see a lot of work happening in the area of where two organizations coming together, collaborating, sharing data, coming up with new business models. So that's basically what we focus on. And ecosystem is a way forward for a lot of organizations. Our primary commitment is to help organization establish ecosystem, and blockchain is definitely has certain inherent advantage of helping organization to set up that. So my primary area of work is helping organizations come together, get into these partnerships, leverage new business models coming out with open data, artificial intelligence, and then building, overlaying the new technologies or emerging technologies on the top of that. I would happy to discuss few of the use cases as we go forward.
Hi, good afternoon or almost good evening to everyone. My name is Val, CEO and founder of PolicyPal Group. So we started 3 years ago as an insurtech startup. so among all the giants next to me. So we started as an insurance policy management platform to help consumers to do policy management. Over time, we gotten our insurance broker license working with very lucky Sompo and AXA, like on the panel here, distributing insurance products to them. And what we see that basically the growth in terms of like the technology on what we can do more together with our insurance partners, rather than just taking the existing products that they already have and putting them onto our mobile application to sell. So early last year, we launched our blockchain entity, PAL network. Basically, it's a dual layer blockchain that we forked from Ethereum to be able to solve the problem of privacy concern, as well as scalability and costs for public blockchain. And why don't we use private blockchain such as R3? Mainly because we want to actually build the public layer to communicate with the end consumer, so that there's a trust level that, like Tomasz mentioned, because the trust issue that people actually have with the insurers. So information that we can actually put on the public layer helps to actually increase the trust level, or how many people actually bought the policy and all. So last year we have launched with Ergo, it's a German insurance company, subsidiary of Munich Re, on automated flight delay claims, collaborating with DBS to automate the claims payout into your PayNow account. So, so far we have been experimenting a couple of new insurance products on the blockchain with insurance partners. So happy to share more later.
My turn. My name is Patrick. Actually, it's spelled wrongly. It's Sompo. I don't know whether it's not Sampo. I see it, Sampo. What is this company? Sompo is actually the largest general insurance in Japan. Our revenue is 40 billion worldwide. I cover 14 markets outside of Japan. And on my area, my role, I'm heading both digital, at the same time branding. These are quite important because once you have all the digital technologies, you are able to bring in branding to wrap around it. I just want to give a quick thinking around our evolvement of our understanding of digital in Sompo. I think I want to be very frank. I think most insurers are beginning on a stage of understanding even AI, big data, or even now blockchain. We're still trying to figure out how best to utilize such technologies. And it's always a mover and look and see approach. When your competitors do it, then you try to do it. Then you just to ensure that the loss itself is minimal. And also another thing from the insurance point of view, just to let you know, insurance company makes money from underwriting, smart underwriting. And smart underwriting meaning that you select the right customers, you select the right customer that they don't claim so much. So with such technology disruptively, incidentally, you are trying to open up a lot of things. So that's actually quite interesting way of how do we tap on that. Okay?
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Yeah.
And I think that's a wonderful segue. Maybe what we'll do is we'll start with getting views from the two of you, because both of you represent the enterprise space, and get some insights as to, look, if we were to believe that blockchain is here and it's fully deployable, what problems do you think it can actually solve for the enterprises within insurance? And I'll then come to Val and kind of get a bit of perspectives on the insurtech world as well. And if you could also comment as to where is the value, who's chasing it, and what developments do you specifically see which gets you excited? So perhaps we can start with Tomasz and then perhaps go to Patrick.
Just to precise, solving the problems for the insurer or the customer?
The insurer first.
So most of the big insurance companies suffer from one big issue, and Jeff Bezos has this quote that your margin is my opportunity, and in case of insurance, it's your inefficiency. Because most of the insurance companies, established companies, they have a very high cost base because of all the legacy and how they operate, how the business is, because the business is very traditional, as you said, it's a lot of manual processes, legacy system that drives up the cost. So here from the one perspective is, one is definitely automation and application of the smart contracts, but the theory is good, but in order to be able to deploy smart contracts effectively, it requires much bigger change, because what is smart contract? It's basically itemized risks and transfers and moves into the machine executable format. Today, if you look across, the biggest challenge is how you build a product so you have itemized risks that can actually be translated in a very easy way to something that can be coded in and executed upon. And then if this DLT solution, smart contract, or some other form of technology, it's the easier part.
And where exactly, what developments have you seen either in your own firm or other firms where you see that the value is being realized and you kind of get excited about it?
So for me, one is definitely claims. So especially health claims. This is one of the biggest areas where there is a perfect alignment between what the government needs across, because we all know that we are facing the inflation of the healthcare costs. In the same time, our population across the world is aging, and with pace, when I checked last time, the inflation is around 5% per year, 5 to 7% depending on the country. So in the next 10 years, most of the system are going to go broke and to crash because we will not be able to sustain it. So, and there is a lot of inefficiencies, especially in terms of fraud, but as well as the information that how we access and use the information. And here DLT comes very with its own features, is very relevant, and we have done some pilots and tests, both in Singapore, but as well as in other markets where we decided let's try to share the health claims information between other insurance companies. Because many people, they will claim multiple times from the different providers on the same risk. And this is one of the biggest what we call leakage areas. And the second one is, today, second area is the data ownership. Today, if you go to the doctor owns your medical records. You don't own them, and if you want to move them, you need to go to the doctor and say, excuse me, can you give me my file, and can I take it to consult a second specialist? So with DLT and ability to anonymize the data and standardize how the health medical records can be ported and use both for the underwriting, but as well as having second opinions and verify the information that was provided by the doctor, it's one of the key highest value that can be delivered. To be honest, in a short time, when I say short, it's around 3 years, because there is a perfect alignment between government, regulators, and insurance.
Thank you. And Patrick, if I may pull you in.
Okay, sure.
In the world of insurance, there is always a range. There are companies which claim to be fast insurance, where they really move at a fast pace. But then even within that organization, there is a slow insurance where things just do not move no matter what technology process you add up, right? So if you don't mind sharing your perspective, specifically from the North Asia, Japan market, where do you see the value and what developments within those markets actually excite you with the prospect of what's possible?
Specifically on DLT? Okay. So I'll be very frank. Okay, I just came back I was in China on Monday, Tuesday, then I went to Hong Kong on Wednesday. I just landed today, so a bit tired, okay? So the main thing that I'll be very frank is the progression of DLT over in those countries is much faster. Part of the reason is because the government is all the way behind. Let me explain to you, in China, the Shanghai government has created a blockchain platform for 3 insurers to participate. Basically the Japanese insurers, MSIG, Tokyo Marine, and Sompo. The reason why they invite these 3 in is because our processes are the same. So that's why they assume the processes are the same. We put our data in, we went through this blockchain and whatever terms that we use, right? We tried trying to validate and so on, and the smart contracts, we went through all these things. I think one of the key learning we realized is, in order for us to prepare for ourselves for this blockchain disruptions, we realized that even you have all the APIs, you submit the data definition is very different. Like how we, even though our process is 100% the same, how you define the data captured in every company is posed to be a big challenge. Then in Hong Kong, when I came from Hong Kong, the government also tried to propose something like this time around in motor insurance. What happened is they also asked all the insurance to upload their data into the system. Then from then on, they able them to produce a QR code. Once the QR code is out, they put it on a contract itself, the real contract. And whenever there's any accident, the police officer will just scan to validate that this is the true insurance policies. These are the two use cases that we're trying, but in a nutshell, we are still trying to prepare ourselves for blockchain. I don't say that we are very advanced. I think we are still in the beginning stage for Sompo. I wouldn't dare to say that we're advanced.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And Amit, if I may bring you in. So we've kind of heard the enterprise industry perspective, and I know R3 as an organization kind of deals with a whole range of customers across industry. If you try and focus your views around insure and FI, fintech in general, what observations do you see and what action do you see happening which excites you?
I think in our view, we see value generation across the value chain of insurance today. So from policy to billing to claims, multi-claims fraud is a big use case, as Thomas mentioned. The auto insurance example, which Patrick mentions, is actually built on Chawra. So that removes fraud in the auto insurance market because agents were actually giving insurance policies which were not, which were fake insurance policies. So we see value coming across from those. Let me take two other examples potentially. So one, we are seeing convergence of two different industries coming together to drive value, so healthcare and insurance. So we are seeing insurers now collaborating with hospital chains or clinic chains to actually develop applications which are streamlining the process of claims management. So that's one. In the case of InsureWave, and our Microsoft colleague, our friend mentioned that earlier, there's an example from on marine insurance where they are actually using telematics and other technology to do risk-based pricing. And this is giving both the client, which is Maersk in this case, better premiums from the insurers, and it's giving insurers a better way and a faster way to actually settle claims. They have real-time understanding of the exposure they have based on where the ships are, rather than having a stale data set which comes once in a while. So I think there are examples where we are seeing blockchain either in the claim side, fraud side is quite big, I think, and even other areas of the value chain.
Thank you so much. And Shrikant, if I can lean on you to share a consultant's perspective, because there is the enterprise, there's the technology side, but then when you kind of take a step back and look at how the whole market, the insurance and the blockchain and the tech space is playing out, when you look at things from an ecosystem perspective, you talked about partnerships earlier. How do you see this playing out? Where do you see this heading? Where's the value?
Sure. So if you think about insurance, right? I mean, we do a lot of work outside insurance. So I just want to be kind of leveraging some of the experience outside the other industries. So if you think about banking, today banking is quite, in UK, in different parts of the world, even Hong Kong, you see open banking or open data sharing becoming a very common practice. And banks and financial institutions are forced to share the data. One of the big challenges which we see in the insurance industry is that a lot of insurance companies are struggling to know the customer better, because if you think about the whole process, there are a lot of intermediaries before you actually get a lot of data coming from the customer. And then in case of a renewal, you run into a lot of challenges into finding the right kind of product to be offered. In some cases because of intermediary, in some cases it's because of the data. So I would say one big issue which is in insurance as well as across different industries is solving for the right amount of data and exchanging the data. So in case there is one example which in India, life insurance companies, they've come together, top life insurance companies, they have started sharing data on blockchain. So that's one of the things which went live last year. And that's a good example of how insurance companies can collaborate to come together. Again, these are top companies. The other dimension is obviously the fraud. A lot of challenges with reference to fraud underwriting, which insurance can help. And these are very simple examples, like if you heard about a device like Fitbit, there is something called Bit Health, which captures the data and stores on blockchain, which then insurance companies can validate and make sure that you got the right kind of health management which is going on, or the practices going on. The third dimension is, as Thomas mentioned about the smart contracts. Traditionally, if you think about insurance companies, and I'm just comparing them across, right? If you go to telco, if you go to banking, if you go to retail, e-commerce, or the new big tech companies, which are now putting a lot of automation in front at the forefront. But insurance companies traditionally are still catching up in the game of saying, how do I modernize technology? How do I make sure that, a lot of legacy what I have carried, how do I move forward, right? They're moving to cloud or moving to some of these new techniques where AI and other new emerging technologies would come in. So there would be some challenges in terms of absorbing those and moving forward with those. So those areas where you see a lot of automation as an opportunity for insurance, and things like smart contract can add a lot of value. And this is how I see it in terms of automation is a great opportunity, data is a great opportunity, and fraud management is a great opportunity from an outside-in view to explore further.
Thank you so much. And Val, if I may bring you into the equation now. So, look, PolicyPal is a fantastic story, and almost every Singaporean is really proud of, we call it our achievement. So what we'd really benefit, if you could draw into your own experience and share what examples of disruption or innovation that you've seen actually drive real impact. And if you can share from your experience any practical tips or lessons as to, these are the common pitfalls, or this is how the way is paved with a lot of holes and you need to navigate your way through, it'll be really, really fantastic.
Thank you. So impact in terms of to the insurers or to the consumer?
So one is InsurTech by itself is disrupting the industry. So there is benefit by making things better, faster, more efficient. But at the same time, InsurTech actually works because it passes a lot of value to the customers as well. And therefore you have that attraction. So please think of value on both sides of the equation. So what could you share from your experience which will really help?
Okay, I will bring back all the way to when we first started. At the point, there were no such word called InsurTech. I remember that I have to explain, we're not really fintech, we're building an insurance platform. And then I have to explain what we're really doing. And then most of the insurers that we were speaking with were much more familiar with aggregators. There were a lot of price comparison sites, like GoBear, MoneySmart were around. So many of them actually view us as a price comparison site. So they got a little bit worried about it. So from then, I think they started looking at these companies as fintech/insurtech. They are price comparison sites. They are here to actually bring down the prices for the end consumer, because at the end of the day, they want to serve the consumer. But for myself, as a founder of PolicyPal, with the background in the finance, and also I was in the bank, so I do understand that basically if you try to push down the price for the end consumer, it's good, but at the end of the day, you have to remove something from the product, because after all, the ecosystem need to survive. You need to be profitable to be able to grow. So it also means that the insurance product itself will have to remove certain coverages, which actually the end consumer might not be aware until they file the claim, and that's the whole issue of insurer don't want to give out the claim, etc. So that evolution of price comparison started the whole InsurTech. Then over time, new insurance startups come about and then start talking about disruptor. But I see that like the past 2 years, from a disruptor, a lot of us are actually enabler. Why so? Meaning is that this whole ecosystem has been around for many years, like decades. So I always joke about, like, especially at CBD, you just need to look up how many buildings are owned by insurance company and why are they here for so long. Reason being because they are here in the ecosystem and they know like what are the things to do. How on earth, like as a young company, saying that we are going to be disrupting like the big giants out there. So what is it that we know better? Probably that we think we know better is that we are able to move fast. I think that's a key that in a startup we definitely can move way faster. But in terms of the knowledge of like underwriting and also the whole process of loss ratio, how do you manage new product creation? Insurance companies probably have the experts there. But over time, I see that a lot of insurtech come out with innovative products, but the real impact to the end consumer, a lot is on the relevancy of product, point of need, point of demand, rather than, because this is really cool to actually launch, and then we just do it. It's probably good for a PR, like if that's the KPI for like that corporate person, it's good for them, but long-term wise, we need to actually bring real value to the end consumer, which translates to the end value to the insurance partner that we work with. Because after all, we are the bridge. We view ourselves as a bridge. So in Singapore, we have our license, so we can help to distribute. In other countries, we offer the technology to the insurer, and then we collaborate with another party to serve the end consumer. So I think it draws back to why the company got started. Like every founder probably have different reasons of why they started the company. Maybe some of them just, maybe they dislike something or etc. But why we started the business, call it a business, right? I cannot call it just like a platform, like some of our investors will not get too happy about. So when we first started, it was a product. The product to solve a problem that I personally face for my family is that we're not able to remember when we need to pay for premiums. We're not aware that like my late father didn't have XYZ policy. So the main purpose is to serve the consumer. So if I can close the loop of the whole ecosystem, this actually drives the impact to the whole like society. So just to round it up, basically I think that like we need to have relevant product, we need to be able to reach the end consumer, and we have to constantly work closely with the insurers. Just now when I walk in, I joke with Tomasz, I say 3 years on, I always say, hi, what else can we do together? So it's about like understanding what are their needs and then what are the technology that we can help to achieve that together for the end consumer.
Thank you so much. And one question, and I'd like opinions from yourself as well as Tomasz. So go back, say about 12 months, when you were insurtech, but you were not necessarily leveraging blockchain. By bringing in blockchain, do you think you see a step change, either internally or with your customer base, so the capabilities which blockchain has brought to the table? And two, maybe Tomasz, your perspective. So one of the things that we as consultants see in the industry is to say, for development of blockchain to get to an inflection point where full value is realized, it's more about cooperation rather than competition. So what would be your views around that? So maybe, Val, if you could comment on the first one.
So in the early days, a lot of insurers thought that we price comparisons like initially, so they were quite wary about it. And over time, as they understand the value that we provide to the end consumer is really the understanding of their coverage, to be able to get the right policy and their claims within the mobile app. They understand that because it's the existing business model. When we launch our blockchain, I have to say that it's extremely challenging speaking with insurance companies that normally are very conservative. When you introduce a new product, a new technology, they will find it really hard to understand. And not many insurance companies actually have like Patrick and Tomasz. So they both understand blockchain. But many times we met like maybe hundreds of insurance companies so far outside of Singapore as well. A lot of them end up, we need to do a lot of, say, education. So what we found out is they will call it national service because you're educating people, you're not really doing the real work. So we share a lot in terms of technology, but what we have learned is that when we speak with people who say, like not like Tomasz or Patrick who understand blockchain, we have to tell them what is the end value to the consumer. If we tell them too much, it's like you don't really need to understand how internet works. You need to know what's the value that internet offers. So we need to explain to them what's the value that the blockchain technology offers, and also we have built out our own microinsurance products to let them see how they exactly work, and then they just need to come in to do the parameters in terms of the pricing, the claims payout, and the distribution partner. So this helped to expedite it through our the product factory platform. So I will let probably Tomasz share more.
And Tomasz, about cooperation or competition, how does it work?
So definitely, the whole value is we are living in a world that's where everything is possible. With technology, we can do everything. But the biggest and the oldest problem is standardization and alignment, because it's not only in insurance. If you look at the history, internet, telecommunication, even things like DVDs, and we had multiple standards competing, and change and the progress was possible only through alignment. And this is one of the biggest issues in insurance, because even though we have Accord, that's supposed to be a standardization body, but outside of regulatory scope and US, it's not adopted anywhere. Let's be frank, and this is one of the biggest issues, because without this, which is the level of standardization of the data, the next stage is standardization of the technology, and either Corda, either Ethereum, either Hyperledger or whatever technology. To be honest, it's a secondary issue and secondary problem, because in order to reach the scale, you need to have multiple partners talking the same language. Because if we end up 10 insurance companies, each one running their own version of the blockchain, what's the difference from today? Then there's no added value. So, and I see it as DLT has a high potential, but it's not necessarily a silver bullet and a solution. So it's all, it will be a silver bullet for many problems, but only when we reach the tipping point of standardization and alignment. But even today, to be honest, when we are discussing internally some pilots and running private DLT versions, if each insurer is running their own nodes, there are some practical problems. How to assure synchronization and upgrade across all the nodes running by multiple companies, So there's reaching this tipping point of standardization and then fixing some practical problems will be key in order to move to the next stage, where it becomes something as standardized as distributed databases, AWS, usage of the cloud solutions. It should be, to be honest, it should be transparent for the insurance companies.
Thank you, Tomasz. And I'm just conscious of the time. We might just have space for one more question. So if I might start with Patrick from Sompo. If you were to choose just one thing that you had the ability to change, which could help speed up or accelerate the pace at which blockchain gets adopted in insurance, what would that be? And if I could have the perspectives around the table, it'll be really good. But keep it brief, just one thing which you'd like to change.
Internally, I think company, we need to change our culture. That's the big thing, that don't underestimate the culture of big companies like 20,000 employees. Externally, I felt a central body who comes in strong enough for us to adopt.
Thank you. Val?
I think it's having more of Patrick and Tomasz in the insurance companies. Yeah.
So is it more about people who bring in the right knowledge and attitude?
It's a lot about the people who understand and champion this new technology. Yeah.
Thank you. Shrikant?
So there's a very interesting book by Dr. Raghuram Rajan. He recently published about communities. I would say, it's about cohesive communities, building, coordinated, collaborative communities. I would say think about blockchain as a solution which brings these communities together. It's an ecosystem, it's a digital ecosystem, but think about it as a communities. And the future 10 years from now would be internet of blockchains, right? So you would have these communities talking to each other, but which are very fully trusted communities. Probably, 5,000 years ago, we had those trusted communities of people trusting each other. So we need to create that, and that's how I see, would be the most important thing is to build those communities and think about blockchain solution as a community solution.
Thank you. Thomas, in addition to the data?
So now I'm on the Val put me on the spot. So what needs to happen is alignment of, I see it's three parties: government, insurance industry, and preferably one more industry. So this is where the real value can be delivered by DLT technology. If you have those three together, working towards the same goal, solving the same problem, it's I think we're going to see very good success.
And Amit?
I think two parts. One, I would echo what somebody else said on, a central body or an association kind of driving some change for the industry and bringing some people together. I think on the technical side, there is already a lot of work happening on at least within protocol interoperability. So we focus a lot on that, of how one application within Corda communicates with another. And eventually, I think once, multi-protocol interoperability starts happening, then we'll see some acceleration as well.
Thank you. So let me try and synthesize some of the great discussions that we've had today. So look, if we talk about blockchain, I think it's just an agent for transformation of an industry which has been behaving or kind of been acting in a certain way for a very, very long time. And now the winds of change are here. Yes, a technology has the potential to really disrupt and kind of be the agent which kickstarts the change and be the catalyst. But what we hear from the different panelists today is technology itself is not the answer. It's perhaps the enabler. The culture is equally important. The regulatory aspects need to be worked out. It's more a matter of cooperation rather than competition, at least in the initial stages. It is there are lots of white spaces where people who innovate from an insurtech angle can really capitalize. And there are a lot of efficiencies in the way people work, or the way large organizations work, where there is a lot of value to be unlocked without really cutting each other's throat. And if we go by the tenet which Shrikant shared, it's about communities. And I think the pie can only be made bigger, and the value can only be increased if we get more efficient. We'll focus our efforts in kind of providing better services, making sure people are not afraid of insurance, because I'm sure whatever reports you read, the potential for what could be achieved from an insurance and what is actually achieved, the percentage of uninsured is a huge amount. So lots of potential, and I think we might be at a precipice of having a catalyst which might trigger the change. So we'll stop there and we'll start taking some questions from the audience. Let me have a look. Maybe I'll point this question to Amit. There's a question from the audience to say, do insurers and insurtech players favor a certain blockchain? Let's say, for example, R3, Ethereum, or Ripple. So there could be two sides to it. So Amit, perhaps you could share some view as to whether, do you see clients already have a preference when they start talking to you? And perhaps our industry people could actually share whether you have a choice for a particular platform when you think about it.
At least some of the facts in there of existing production grade applications will suggest a bias towards us, and I like that. So that's one data point. I think why we have seen some preference towards certain blockchains over others, I think at least from our lens, it's privacy. It's interoperability of applications within the same blockchain network. And I think those are the two primary reasons why we have seen preference. I really see that potentially there are use cases where public blockchains make more sense than permissioned private blockchains like ours. So I think that they will coexist, but at least we seem to have some preference from the industry as of today based on what's live.
And Val, if I may ask, what specific platform are you guys using at PolicyPal?
We build our own blockchain forking from Ethereum network. So it's called Pal Network Blockchain. It's on the GitHub if you are interested to read the blue paper. So why we fork from Ethereum and then how we built our dual layer blockchain.
Cool. And both Patrick and Tomasz, from an enterprise view, is there a process which you guys follow when you think about selecting a platform, or is there a preferred choice, or you build your own? What's the view?
So to be honest, we experienced already with 3 different platforms. So it was both Ethereum, it was Hyperledger, and IOTA, for different cases. Because it was for us, it was we run some pilots and actual application, but it's more about, for us, it's a learning journey. So what we in the end wanted to acquire is actually hands-on experience and learning. So when we deploy a large-scale use cases, we know what kind of errors to avoid, because it's that different solutions to the different problems. So it's all about finding the right one, and having this experience helps you to avoid a lot of problem and mistakes.
Thank you. And Patrick, any views from you?
So from our end is, for Sompo, we started with a B2B company, so permission private is something we like because the risk is lesser. But as long as we touch consumers, I think that's a part that we need more knowledge and more knowledge.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next question. So this one is again anonymous, but I'll kind of read it verbatim. It's interesting. So what do you foresee as the outcome of disruption of blockchain in the insurance industry? Will we see fully automated DAO or smart contract based insurers? Just like we have digital natives, can we have a blockchain native insurer, or that is already here? Maybe, Val, you might start, but anybody else, please feel free to jump in.
I got something to share because a week or 2 ago, it was on Bloomberg News. Basically, Jack Ma has launched the critical illness insurance on the blockchain. So that's already happening in China. So I guess maybe Patrick can share since he just came back from China and Hong Kong.
Yeah, I think as the cliche they say, it's already here, it's happening. So I think it's a matter of, but I think what to share a perspective is the traditional company like us will try to defend our pie.
But how would you do that?
So most important is we will try to learn as much as we can, and we go up to speed, we will try to collaborate as soon as possible with the big players. That's why we started in China, the big 3 players, and we invite more people. At the end of the day, we're trying to defend the profits, if you think about it.
Shrikant?
I can just add one additional dimension to this, right? When you think about all of these, the internet of value, right? I mean, blockchain is about exchanging value over internet. If you think about the parallel mechanism which needs to be ready for it. So for example, if you think about smart contract, insurance industry has opportunity to insure smart contracts. Similarly, all the assets which are there on the blockchain would require a bit of insurance, right? So when you think about assets, there are, when companies are launching ICOs, STOs, there are also risks the directors and all of these guys are facing, right? So what I'm not covering all the details of that, but we need to also look at, understand the fact that when we move to blockchain, it also creates different type of opportunities, and I'm speaking because as MMC companies, Marsh is offering some of these solutions for the cyber risk to enable it. So think about blockchain, but at the same time, these mechanisms, which are either legal mechanisms or insurance-related solutions, have to also build. So I would see it as an opportunity which is evolving in parallel to the real world, which is like the digital stuff which is happening. But then you need to also the insurance also has to evolve to meet some of these expectations. So both will go hand in hand.
Thomas, you have a perspective?
It just boils down to the use case. In case of private permissioned application, I don't think it's for full stack insurance. I don't think it's going to happen very soon. But what can happen is intersection whenever. Good example might be provenance of the data of the goods, where in those niche cases, and the case might be collectibles, arts, with the where this data can be public information put on the blockchain in terms of to trace the provenance and ownership of the assets, where eventually automated, I would say, pulling of the risk using the blockchain and providing the coverage for that kind of products makes sense. But once again, it all boils down to the use case, because it's about finding solution to the problem, not the other way around, and taking the approach of the nail and hammer, where DLT is a hammer and we are trying to find nails everywhere just to make a use of the technology.
Thank you so much. Amit, 4 seconds, 5 seconds?
Sure. I think there are disruption going to happen, but it's not just blockchain enabled. I think multiple technologies are potentially going to come together, AI, ML, telematics and others, and you will see disruptors coming out of using those technologies. I also see forward-looking organizations and existing insurers actually taking technology on board, and they are doing a lot of things already. So I think it'll be a confluence of both the disruptors and the incumbents coming together, and we see ourselves as an enabler of the enterprise. So that's what we do. It's a convergence of technologies in my mind.
So we'll end here, and we'll say, at least when it comes to the insurance industry, based on what I've learned, the future seems to be here now, and there's a lot happening. Look, thanks a lot to the panel members, and thank you for sharing rich insights, and thank you for the audience for being very patient. I know it's the last event of the day, but hopefully we try to make it as exciting as possible.